Welcome back, everyone. It is week 7 of the Functional Effect Coaching Group. And over the past 6 weeks, we have unpacked awareness. We have talked about identity. We've talked about taking action. We've talked about returning to baseline after things go awry and you get off path. And last week, we talked about designing systems that support your consistency in our first call with Dr. Tyler.
And I'm back.
And he's back again for another week with us. But there's one piece that can override all of that in an instant. It's stress. Emotional stress, to be more specific, and the pressure that is associated with that emotional stress, to be even more specific. So you can have the perfect systems in place and still find yourself reaching for the old patterns and old habits when you are overwhelmed. How do I know? Well, ask me, because I may or may not have been privy to having this happen myself in months and years past. When I have found myself overwhelmed and stressed, it's easy to fall back into those old habits. So tonight, that's what we're going to unpack. We're going to talk about why that happens. We're going to talk about how to interrupt it without introducing the shame game, which is also part of what frequently gets people stuck in this cycle. Because sustainable consistency is not built in the calm moments. It's built in how you respond under pressure. So let's first talk about how stress overrides systems, because I feel like this time of the year, we're in the second semester of the school year. We're getting close to spring break time. Things are starting to ramp up. Spring sports are starting to ramp up. And I've noticed that with a lot of my clients, a lot of people that I know, a lot of colleagues, that they're feeling the weight and the pressure of this time of the year right now. And our nervous system is broken up into two main branches. We have our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight and flight system. And then we have our parasympathetic system, which is the rest and digest. When we are stressed, we are going to stay activated in that fight or flight portion of our nervous system more frequently than not.
And most people in the United States, in our culture, are much heavier in the sympathetic state.
Yeah. We don't do enough things. There aren't enough things built into our culture, to be quite frank with you, to nurture that parasympathetic portion of our nervous system. Our society, our culture was built on the hustle and the chaos of the sympathetic nervous system. So I think that over the decades, it makes sense why so many people in the United States struggle with anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, and all of these feelings of being overburdened.
Yeah.
So when we get to this place and we're in this overstressed state, the one thing that happens from a psychological perspective is that we have a tendency to fall back into old patterns and old habits, because when we go into stress mode, we go into autopilot. And our autopilot habits are oftentimes the ones that we've been doing the longest.
Yeah, and that's our programming, that's our conditioning, that stuff from childhood on, right? That happens. So you can have the best intentions in the world, but unfortunately, when poop hits a fan, we go back to our conditioning.
Because your nervous system doesn't prioritize performance and goals when you're under pressure or when you're perceiving a situation to be unsafe. Your nervous system prioritizes getting to safety. If you are being chased by a bear, your body doesn't care how many pounds you've lost. Your body cares about not getting eaten by the bear. So you're going to do whatever you can to get to safety. And high achievers are especially prone to this phenomenon because we have the unique ability to override our emotions and say, I am not feeling this way until we can't.
Because a lot of people will say, "I'm fine. I'm fine." I you could just I can look at them and be like, "No, you are not fine." I can easily tell that you are not fine.
And really, if anybody knows me long enough, they know that I have it's not my acronym, but I always talk about the true definition of fine. And the true definition of fine, if you want to know, if you're not familiar yet, it's effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, which leads me pretty eloquently into my next point with what emotional triggers really are. So when we talk about the things that bring us to this breaking point where we start engaging in our old habits or veer away from those habits that we're trying to build, a lot of people are like, well, I was triggered. They triggered me and it made me fill in the blank, made me drink, made me go shop, made me eat that meal, it made me do whatever. But what are triggers? And if you really break it down, when you are triggered by something and it makes you feel a certain kind of way that makes you go off the rails in any certain kind of behavior, that is an emotional cue. That is a sign to you that your energy is not being proportioned correctly, that you are somewhere, energy is leaking massively. It is telling me that somewhere in your life there is conflict. It might be your relationship, it might be your workplace, it might be within yourself, but there is conflict somewhere. It tells me that you are not sleeping well enough and that there is likely fatigue happening. It's telling me that you are probably feeling unseen, feeling unheard, and feeling unappreciated in somewhere in your life. And it tells me that you're probably feeling overwhelmed. Trigger, the word trigger, there's so much more to that word. And so, my question to you is if you have felt triggered in the last day, weeks, month, what do you think that really was? Do you think it was your body asking for something from you energetically? Do you think it was your conflict coming up and presenting itself to you? Do you feel like it was your lack of sleep rearing its ugly head? What do you feel like it might have been for you that put you in that position? Because when you are able to be triggered, or when you have lost your sense of humor, that's another really good example of knowing that you are on that precipice of being burned out. When you can't laugh at something that's funny, that is when you need to ask yourself, what am I lacking? Am I needing conflict resolution? Do I need more sleep? Do I maybe need a hug and a glass of water and a balanced meal? Because there's some reason why you are not able to handle and absorb the emotions of another person. If you are triggered emotionally, there is a reason, and it's because you are circling that bowl of burnout. So, this overwhelm or this feeling of being triggered can often lead to the overeating or the opposite end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
skipping
Yeah. You
meals,
see how people skip.
skipping workouts. How often do we see that happen?
Oh, they'll skip over.
Somebody has something emotional come up and
Yep.
all of a sudden they drop off with their workouts or completely veer off of their normal
Of their
routine.
routine. They start to dive into their work heavily. And really, you're dissociating at that point. Is that you're getting in there. You have a lot of avoidance happening. So I mean, that's fairly normal that we see. But when we are going through that process, we are obviously not getting closer to our goals. We're really self-sabotaging, and when that happens, we get what I said before is we're going back to our programming. and which is self-protection at the end of the day. And so we're really protecting ourselves. So if you're not taking care of what Sarah talked about, that's what you're going to fall down to. So the goal is we want to raise that floor up for you. That's the goal.
So, what it is with every call, we want to create a framework around this, right? We want to create a usable, workable framework that you can apply so that when you find yourself in this state of being triggered, that you can stop, that you can analyze, and that you can correct and rectify the situation so that you don't find yourself lather, rinsing, and repeating yourself back to the same state of frustration. So, this framework that we're going to talk about tonight is name, normalize, and navigate. And what that breaks down to is we're going to start by naming the feeling. How often do you feel a certain kind of way and you start just like, I'm fine. I'm just going to move on. I'm just going to move along to the next thing.
Yeah, and the problem is the body. Um, it keeps the score. I mean, there's a book actually called this, but
It's a great book if you haven't
book.
read it.
But it's very true in this situation. Is your body actually will hold on to that. And it's not one time is going to make the big difference. It's when you do it to yourself hundreds of repeated times, and eventually not so good things happen.
Because your brain doesn't know the difference between the truth and what you tell it. And oftentimes the things you're telling yourself aren't the truth. It's the negative self-talk. It's the doom, catastrophic thinking that gets interjected when we're under stress. And so you have to really capture your words and name what you're feeling as a way to start this process out. Because again, giving your body a chance to validate what it's feeling versus suppressing, repressing, and downplaying what you're feeling is basically gaslighting yourself.
Yeah, and it's becoming aware, right? Without coming down on yourself.
You got it. So the next step in that is the normalized step, which is the part where we don't come down on ourselves. It's like, of course, I would want comfort feeling this way. Of course, I would want to pour myself a glass of wine if I felt this way. Of course, I would want to go shop on Amazon and click that buy it now button if I'm feeling this way. Of course, I would want to binge Netflix or doom scroll or eat that chocolate. Fill in the blank with whatever that thing is that you use to make yourself feel better when you're feeling a certain kind of anxious or a certain kind of uncomfortable. Whatever that thing is for you right now, I don't want you to be ashamed of the thing. I want you to normalize it, but not write yourself a permission slip to do it. Because there's a difference. Normalizing the feeling of wanting to do something to soothe yourself, that is a normal feeling. But following through and actually doing that, that's where the third step comes in, which is navigate. We're going to work on navigating the discomfort. We're going to work on navigating a new aligned action. So if your previous response to stress was doom scrolling, then maybe the new navigated response is taking the walk and going outside. Once again, if you're in Chicago, the weather isn't exactly the best for walking outside right now. But as the weather progresses, getting outside and taking a walk when you're feeling stressed, moving your body and walking is hands down the best way to mitigate stress from the human body. So there's a lot to be said about figuring out what does that one aligned action look like for you when you get stressed.
It's like, who are you or who were you and who do you want to become? And the people they have this idea like, this is the goal, this is who I want to be in 3 months, a year, whatever it might be, that time frame. And the thing is, if you want to be that future self, the actions need to happen right now. And then if you do those actions, over a time period, again, you will become that person, and this large part of what we're talking about is navigating towards that goal. No one's perfect by any means, but we're going to work our way towards that.
So, as always, we do a little bit of a quick self assessment when we're in this group, and no need to answer in the comments or the chat. But if you want to share, please feel free to share because I think that this self assessment is really powerful. But when you think about where you drift with your good habits, with the habits that help you show up as your best self, when do you have the greatest tendency to drift away from your good habits? Whether it be a time of the year, whether it be after a certain event happens, when is it for you that you have a tendency to drift away from your good habits the most? For some people, it's the holidays. For some people, it's the summer. It just depends. But I want you to work on identifying it and getting clear with where you have a tendency to drift the most. Second question for your self audit: what emotion usually precedes my drift away from my habits? So when you have a drift, when you tend to veer left or right away from those healthy habits, what is happening emotionally before it happens? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you anxious? What are you feeling? I want you to work on identifying the emotion. Third question: what is your typical default response when you are put in this situation? When you are put in a high stress or a chronic stress situation, what is your typical default response? What habits do you typically detach from? How do you typically show up? Are you a ghoster? Are you an overworker? Are you a pour yourself into your job and forget everything else and detach from society? Are you a hermit? What do you do? Because many of us have a default setting when we are put in the face of chronic stress. And the fourth question I have for you, and the last one: what would it look like for you to have an aligned response instead of your default response in the face of stress? If you have a tendency to ghost when you get stressed out, what would it look like for you to have more aligned action?
Most people get that emotion really quickly, and then it's a really quick response, right? It's this quick, and again, it is going to have, but you have to pause yourself, realign yourself, and think about, okay, this is who I want to become. Let me think. So, what is my next move?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not saying this is easy. It's kind of difficult to do because it takes self awareness, self reflection.
But guys, again, if you haven't yet done that core values exercise that we did, I think it was week 3, the core values exercise is where you start. If you have not yet done that, I don't expect you to be able to do this because it requires you knowing who you want to be, who you are, and what that's going to look like in order for you to get clear here.
Because when you pause, you could, even if it's your top 2 core values, you can quick, if you can't remember your top 2 core values, that's an issue. So you should be able to look to think of those. And by doing that, you're like, that's who I want to be. That's how I want to live this life. Let me realign. Let me change the way my reaction is.
Like, what's one of your top core values?
So my number 1 is love. I think I've never gotten into a situation where I go in with love and it ends up poor, but I have many of times gone in with anger or frustration. That does not end well, ever. I usually. So it's just how I think if I can lead with my heart and my arms open, it's going to be a much better and ending result.
Yeah. So I want you guys to consider, like, what is it for you? What is that core value for you? And are you walking that out in the way that you respond to stress? Because if you can start looking through that lens and start aligning every action you take back to those core values and back to that person that you want to become, It makes the decision making process so much easier.
So much easier.
It takes the pressure way down as to what is the right decision. So I want to leave you with this. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion. Emotion is beautiful. The goal is to respond to your emotion differently. You are not inconsistent. You're human. And as I've said a million times before, the goal is not to show up perfectly. The work is not about removing triggers either. It's about recognizing your triggers sooner, the things that you respond to, the way that you respond to them, and navigating them with intention.
Yeah, so you go back and think about you name it, normalize it, navigate it.
And then that's where the consistency starts to build your resiliency.
Mhm.
So next week, we're going to dive further down the rabbit hole. As always, feel free to invite your family, your friends, or anybody that you feel like could benefit from this message. And always remember that you deserve to feel your best. Have a great night.